toxic masculinity from developing and how to reverse the effects of it in your life, what will happen if we don't, and what exactly you can do to affect it. So toxic masculinity stems from Connell's definition of hegemonic masculinity. And hegemonic masculinity is what you guys all probably think of when you think of masculinity. Stoic, strong, tough, doesn't express much emotion. But Connell's definition says that it is the practice of legitimizing men's dominant position in society. So, in order to assert this dominance, men often become violent. Especially men in media, we see that they get violent very easily, such as in games like Grand Theft Auto or movies like Fight Club. But media is not the only issue. We need to focus on how we are raising boys. When they're young, they're told not to cry. They're told to be tough and to man up. So they're basically being told that being a man means not to show emotion. In Rich's article, Today's Masculinity is Stifling, published in 2018, he explains that adopting a masculine identity often means not having intimate friendships, emotional range, and open communication. So without this outlet for your emotions or validation from your peers, they tend to overconform. If they reject these identities, they are seen as non-conforming. However, the majority of men believe that they do not fit into this category. In Modigan's 2017 article, titled The Fight Against Toxic Masculinity, he explains that many college students don't fit into the idea of the stereotypical frat boy, where they drink a lot, they get a lot of girls, and they have a lot of fun. And, while they're struggling, they find it hard to be vulnerable. They are taught not to. So because they don't express their emotions, they turn violent in order to compensate for failing to be what they see as a man. Because they feel like they're failing, they turn to revenge. And in our society, we have something called the revenge culture, where we don't get mad, we get even. And we see this in a lot of our media. And violence, we don't really see it, but violence gradually increases. It doesn't start at major mass shootings or intense violence. So it's our job to prevent it from starting in the first place. To prevent violence, we need to prevent boys from becoming violent in the first place. In Papa Christa's 2018 article, she explains that there are 5 major ways that we can raise boys so that they won't turn violent. And the first is to define their identity without any stigma of being labeled feminized. So they allow them to figure out what they want to be and not judge them for it. They also, They suggest that we encourage emotion and express our feelings. Oftentimes they're taught not to cry, not to express what they're feeling, and then that leads to bottling up and then eventually exploding. We also need to notice that the media's portrayal of masculinity is often toxic and sexist. And we need to realize that the media that we are showing our children is giving them these ideas. We also need to teach our children that femininity is not inferiority, and that by being feminine or what we see as feminine does not mean that you are any less. And the last point is to teach consent at an early age. And this doesn't necessarily mean in the form of sex, but just in general. And this will lead to a decreased rape culture on campuses like Cal Poly or other universities. So if we don't address violence in media, games, and our everyday social interaction, we will continue to wake up to headlines like these. But if we do address this violence, we will live in a society that is more inclusive, safer, and we won't live in fear of toxic masculinity. So I've talked about future generations and what we can do in order to raise our boys to be better, but there are also steps that you can take in your life. So you can speak up when you hear jokes that are being made about violence or rape, and even if you don't think that the people that are making these jokes are capable of doing these actions, it still contributes to the culture of violence and the normalization of it. I also encourage you guys to express your emotions and encourage the people in your life to express their emotions. It's much better to say what you are feeling rather than to bottle it up and turn violent. I also want you guys to pay attention to the characters in the shows and the games you play. If you notice that, I know that whenever I watch a show or something, I tend to adopt the personalities of the people in the show, and I feel like more into it. I don't know. And I notice that a lot with violent characters and people that are making these jokes, and then people make jokes based on the shows that they're watching. And then lastly, I want you guys to educate yourself. So there are a lot of TED Talks on this subject that you guys can watch. There's one by Justin Baldoni that I found very important. Talks about what it means to be a real man, as well as one. I know you guys have all seen the T video when it comes to consent, but there's one that talks about it in way of pizza, and I feel like that one was very educational, and I suggest that you watch some TED Talks or just educate yourself on the topic. Thank you.